under the dim hush of the night on Midnight Murmurs Radio. You are listening to Evelyn Blackwood, and this is the secret of the old tomb behind the house. A bedtime story, a sleep story, a relaxing story that drifts between the living and the forgotten, where whispers of the past breathe beneath the moonlit soil. Now, my dear listener, before we step into that misty night, take a deep breath in through your nose, hold it for a slow heartbeat, and exhale gently. Let your shoulders soften, let the weight of the day slip from your hands, and allow your mind to settle into this calm, magical stillness. The world outside fades away, and only my voice remains, a quiet echo to guide you toward rest. Imagine yourself walking down a narrow path lined with old trees, their branches swaying like weary guardians. The air smells faintly of wood smoke and rain-soaked leaves. A gentle fog curls along the ground, silvered by the pale light of the moon. Somewhere, far away, an owl calls, low and distant, as if warning you to tread softly. You reach a rusted iron gate, its hinges sighing when you push it open. Beyond it stands an old house, the Blackwood Estata, relic of another time. Its walls veined with ivy, its windows clouded with age. Behind it, under a weeping willow, rests a mound of earth crowned by a weathered stone. The old tomb. Locals whisper that it was sealed in the winter of 1893, the night the river froze and a young girl vanished without a trace. But even in its silence, the house seems to breathe. And tonight, it whispers again. Inside, the air carries the scent of lavender and old wood, of memories pressed between pages of forgotten journals. Sarah Whitmore, a painter of 27 from Boston, has just inherited the place from her great-grandmother. She came here seeking peace, needing to quiet the ache of losing her fiancé in a train accident. Last spring, she thought solitude would heal her, but the stillness of the house feels strange alive. Listening, the wooden floor creaks softly under her steps, and the old oil lamp flickers, casting trembling shadows that stretch and bend like unseen hands. That night, as rain begins to patter against the windows, Sarah hears a sandalo sigh beneath the floorboards, faint but distinct, like someone breathing in their sleep. She tells herself it's just the wind finding its way through cracks in the old foundation. But when the clock strikes 3, she dreams of a willow tree dripping with silver rain, and a girl standing beside a tombstone carved with her own initials, SW. She wakes suddenly, her palms damp, her heartbeat slow but heavy. The air around her feels colder than before, as though she has carried something back from that dream. The next morning, the caretaker, old Mr. Holloway, brings her tea and lingers at the doorway, his eyes avoiding hers. He murmurs, "Best not to wander near the tomb behind the house, miss. Some things ought to rest." His tone is gentle but trembling, as if the warning isn't truly his, but borrowed from someone long gone. Sarah nods, pretending not to care, though the words cling to her like mist. That night, when the rain returns, soft and persistent, she sits by the window, staring at the willow's shadow swaying in the dark. Curiosity curls in her mind, quiet but relentless, like ivy searching for cracks in stone. And somewhere beneath the soil, deep under the willow's roots, something stirs. A whisper, A memory, a name. Sarah. It calls her softly, like the voice of someone she once knew. The house seems to exhale, long and low, and in that breath she feels not fear but recognition, as if part of her has always belonged to this place. Outside, thunder rolls far away, and the night deepens into silence. The world narrows to the rhythm of rain and the soft pull of sleep. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let the whispers stay where they belong in dreams. This has been Midnight Murmurs Radio with me, Evelyn Blackwood. If you wish to hear what Sarah finds when she follows that whisper, join me next time for part 2. The rain had not stopped since dusk. It moved across the roof like a slow heartbeat, steady and patient, filling every corner of the old Blackwood house with its quiet rhythm. Sarah lay awake, her mind tracing the sound, feeling it settle into her chest like a second pulse. The air was thick with the scent of damp wood and burning oil. Somewhere deep within the walls, water dripped, steady and hollow, counting the hours between one heartbeat and the next. She tried to sleep, but the dream from the night before lingered the willow tree, the silver rain, the girl who looked like her, and that tombstone carved with her initials. She rose from bed and pulled on her shawl, her feet bare against the cool floorboards. The lamp's glow followed her like a tame ghost as she moved down the hallway. The portraits on the wall watched her, their eyes dulled by dust but filled with quiet knowing. When she reached the back door, she hesitated. The wind sighed through the cracks, carrying the faint scent of wet earth and something older like rust or time. She pushed the door open. The night welcomed her with open arms. Outside, the world was soft and dark, wrapped in fog that glowed faintly under the moon. The willow stood tall at the edge of the garden, its branches heavy with rain, trailing like fingers over the old tomb. The ground around it gleamed, slick and breathing. Sarah stepped closer. Each step made the earth whisper beneath her, a sound like fabric tearing slowly. The tombstone leaned slightly, its edges worn smooth, the engraving nearly swallowed by moss. She brushed her hand across it, tracing the faint letters. Beneath her touch, the stone felt warm. For a moment she thought she heard something hum, low and rhythmic, like a voice buried just under the surface. She froze, her breath catching in the mist. The sound faded. Only the rain remained. She told herself it was imagination, exhaustion, the echo of grief. But when she turned to go, her lamp flickered. The light dimmed, flared, then went out. The darkness folded around her, complete. And in that darkness, she heard it clearly, this time, a whisper, not words, not quite, just the shape of breath forming her name. Sarah. Her heart lurched. She stumbled backward, the lamp clattering to the ground. When she lifted it again, the light returned, trembling but alive. The tomb was silent, the whisper gone. Yet the earth beneath her seemed to pulse faintly, as though something ancient was listening. Back inside the house, she closed the door and pressed her back against it, her breath shallow. The warmth of the lamp trembled across the wooden floor. In the corner of the parlor, a grandfather clock began to chime, slow and deliberate. 3 times. Always 3. She remembered the dream. The same hour, the same sound, the same voice. The air shifted, and she felt it again, that quiet recognition, the strange pull that was not fear but familiarity, as though the voice that whispered her name was not warning her, but welcoming her home. Upstairs, in the guest room, the portrait of her great-grandmother, Eliza Blackwood, stared from the wall. Sarah looked up at it, drawn by a faint shimmer in the lamplight. There, behind the glass, she thought she saw something, a reflection that did not belong to her. For a heartbeat, she could swear the woman in the portrait smiled. Just a small, knowing smile. And then it was gone. Sarah backed away, heart hammering, until she reached her room. She climbed into bed, pulling the quilt around her shoulders, trying to convince herself that the exhaustion was playing tricks on her senses. But as her eyes closed, the whisper returned, softer now, closer, curling around her like breath against her ear. Beneath the willow, beneath the stone, beneath the years, something waits. The words slid into her half-sleep like silk, and she did not know if they came from her dream or from the soil itself. As the rain lulled her into that blurred place between waking and sleep, she thought she heard one final sound, the slow rhythm of a heartbeat echoing up from the earth behind the house. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The night will hold its secrets until the morning light. This has been Midnight Murmurs Radio with me, Evelyn Blackwood. Join me next time for part 3, where the whispers beneath the willow grow louder and the past begins to awaken. Morning came pale and soft, a thin light pressing through the lace curtains like the first breath after a long night under water. The rain had stopped, leaving behind the scent of damp earth and wood smoke drifting through the open window. Sarah woke slowly. The echoes of the whispers still curled in the corners of her mind. The old house felt different in daylight, still quiet, still listening, but less menacing, as if it too was trying to remember something forgotten. She dressed and descended the staircase, her hand gliding along the carved banister, polished smooth by generations of touch. In the parlor the fire had gone out. The ashes were grey and soft, cold beneath her fingertips. On the table beside the hearth lay a small brass key, one she didn't remember leaving there. It was ornate, marked with the initials E.B. She turned it over, feeling the weight of it, the faint warmth of metal that seemed too alive to be inanimate. E.B. Eliza Blackwood, her great-grandmother, the same initials engraved at the bottom of the portrait upstairs. Perhaps Mr. Holloway had left it there, she thought. Yet when she asked him, later that morning, he only frowned, his weathered hands tightening around the handle of his broom. "Never seen that key before, Miss Whitmore," he murmured. "But if it belongs here, you best leave it where you found it. Aside, no more." His eyes avoided hers again, the same way they had when he warned her about the tomb. After breakfast, she walked through the west corridor, where tall windows framed the garden behind the house. The willow stood perfectly still, its branches motionless, though no wind stirred. The tomb beneath it seemed to draw her gaze, no matter how hard she tried to look away. There was something magnetic in that quiet patch of earth. She turned instead toward the library, the oldest room in the house. The door groaned open, exhaling the dust of years. Books lined every wall, heavy volumes, bound in cracked leather, Their spines faded to the color of old smoke. The air smelled of ink and candle wax, the perfume of history. She lit a lamp and wandered between the shelves until she reached a small desk by the window. There, half hidden beneath a pile of papers, was a notebook. Its cover was dark red, nearly black, tied shut with a ribbon the color of dried blood. The initials were their regeni. B? The ribbon snapped easily. Inside, the pages were filled with looping cursive, fragile but legible. The first entry was dated October 31st, 1892. Tonight, the river froze before midnight. The air feels thick, heavy with something unspoken. He says the voices come from beneath the willow, but I cannot hear them yet. I only feel the tremor under the floorboards when I pray. If this continues, I will do what must be done. Forgive me. Sarah read the words twice, her pulse quickening. The handwriting slanted slightly to the left, elegant and deliberate. She turned the page. November 2nd, 1892. The child grew restless again. She says she dreams of another girl who bears her name. It cannot be true. And yet each time I look into her eyes, I see something that does not belong to this century. The entry ended abruptly, a drop of ink smudging the last line. Sarah stared at the page until the letters seemed to ripple. A draft brushed her cheek, cool and sudden. The lamp flame flickered once, twice, and went still. Behind her, the floor creaked. Slowly, she turned. Nothing there, only shelves and dust, and the faint scent of lavender. But the room felt heavier, the silence deeper. She closed the book and pressed it against her chest. Outside, a crow cried from the willow tree, the sound sharp enough to break the stillness. The moment shattered. She exhaled and returned the book to the desk. Yet something inside her knew this was only the beginning. The dreams, the whispers, the tomb, everything pointed back to Eliza Blackwood. And somehow, through blood or memory or time itself, they were bound. That night, Sarah placed the brass key beneath her pillow. Sleep came in waves, soft and restless. She dreamed of the willow again. But this time she was not standing beside the tomb, she was inside it. Around her, walls of earth pressed close, warm and breathing. She heard a heartbeat, slow and ancient, echoing in her chest. When she looked down, the key in her hand began to glow faintly, pulsing like a living thing. From above, a voice whispered through the soil, a woman's voice calm and low. "You've come back to finish what I began." Sarah tried to speak, but her voice would not form. The earth around her trembled, and she woke, gasping, her hand clutching the empty air where the key had been. But when she looked beside her pillow, the key was gone. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let the whispers rest beneath the willow until the next night calls them back. This has been Midnight Murmurs Radio with me, Evelyn Blackwood. Join me next time for part 4 as Sarah unlocks the first door in the house of her family's buried past. The following evening fell quiet and pale, the kind of stillness that presses against the skin before a storm. The light drained early from the sky, leaving the old Blackwood house wrapped in blue shadow. Sarah sat by the window, her tea untouched, watching the willow sway without wind. The brass key had vanished. yet its absence felt heavier than its presence. She had searched every drawer, every crack in the floorboards, but the house remained mute. The only sound was the soft ticking of the parlor clock, echoing through the corridors like a heartbeat too large for its chest. She tried to paint to distract herself. The canvas showed the garden bathed in moonlight, the willow bending over the tomb. But as her brush moved, her hands trembled, and the colors darkened on their own, the greens turning to gray, the sky deepening to black. When she stepped back, she saw something she hadn't painted, a faint silhouette beneath the tree, a woman's outline, blurred but unmistakable. The shape seemed to lean toward the tomb, one hand resting on the stone, the other stretched toward the houses. If calling her, Sarah dropped the brush. It rolled across the floor, leaving a streak of red like a wound. That night, she could not stay indoors. A force both gentle and merciless drew her outside. She wrapped herself in a shawl and stepped into the fog. The moon was thin, hanging low, its light barely enough to trace the path. The air smelled of wet leaves and the iron tents of old soil. Each step sank softly into the ground, muffled by the weight of the mist. When she reached the willow, she stopped. The tomb looked almost new, the stone clean of moss, the engraving clear under her trembling hand. Eliza Blackwood, 1865 to 1893. She stared at the name. It was the first time she had seen the dates, and something about them felt wrong. Her great-grandmother couldn't have died that early. Family records said she lived well into the 1920s. She knelt, brushing away the dirt from the base of the stone, and there it was, again another set of faint letters, carved beneath the first name, smaller, almost erased by time. Sarah whipped, her breath caught. For a moment, she thought her vision betrayed her, that the fog distorted what she saw. But the letters were real, carved deep. The sound of the wind rose behind her, though the trees did not move. The air turned colder, sharper, and the shadows near the tomb began to thicken. The willow's branches stirred, their movement unnatural, bending toward her as though drawn by her heartbeat. She took a step back, her pulse hammering, but her heels struck something solid in the mud. She looked down. It was the brass key. It lay half-braid at her feet, gleaming faintly in the moonlight. Her hand trembled as she reached for it. The moment her fingers touched the metal, the earth beneath the tomb shivered. A hollow sound echoed up from below 3 slow knocks. Sarah froze. Then the fourth came, softer, deliberate, like a hand pressing from the other side. She stumbled backward, clutching the key to her chest. The whisper followed her again, closer than ever, forming words now, clear as breath. Find me. She turned and ran toward the house, the fog closing around her, branches brushing her shoulders like grasping fingers. When she reached the porch, the door opened before she could touch it. Inside, the lamps were lit, though she had not struck a match. The air carried the scent of lavender again, but beneath it was something new, the faint perfume of candle wax and earth. On the table by the stairs lay the red notebook, open to a page she hadn't read. If the blood returns, the gate will open. She must remember the vow beneath the willow. Only through her will the past be undone. The handwriting was no longer Eliza's. It was hers, the ink still wet. The room tilted. The room tilted. She dropped the key and it struck the floor with a hollow ring. The sound seemed to echo forever. Her reflection in the window did not move when she did. The figure within the glass smiled faintly, lips forming the same two words. Find me. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let the fog of memory hold you gently, and the whispers fade to nothing but a dream. This has been Midnight Murmurs Radio with me, Evelyn Blackwood. Join me next time for Part 5, where Sarah follows the trail of the key into the hidden cellar and the truth buried beneath generations of silence. The storm arrived just before midnight. Wind lashed against the shutters, and rain swept across the garden in heavy, slanting sheets. The willow thrushed under the violence of the weather, its long branches clawing at the tomb as if trying to tear something free. Inside the Blackwood house, Sarah sat awake by the fire, her fingers curled tightly around the brass key she had dropped hours before. She didn't remember picking it up, only that when she opened her eyes, it was already there, resting in her palm like it had been waiting. The red notebook lay open on her lap, the pages fluttering though there was no draft. Her name appeared again and again across the paper, written in the same looping hand. Some lines she recognized as her own, but others spoke of things she could not have known. The cellar door will open when the storm returns. The key must turn 3 times. Do not look at her when you hear your name. Sarah closed the notebook and pressed her fingers to her temples. The air around her pulsed with low, rhythmic sounds like footsteps from somewhere deep below the floor. She told herself it was just the storm, the house settling, but the noise had weight, direction, intent. She rose slowly, the key warm against her skin, and followed the sound down the hallway toward the kitchen. Each lamp she passed dimmed slightly, as though the flame inside bowed to her passing. When she reached the door leading to the cellar, she stopped. The doorknob gleamed faintly in the flickering light. For the first time, she noticed the shape carved into the wood, a small engraving of a willow tree, its roots curling into a circle. Her heart beat faster. She fit the key into the lock, the metal sliding smoothly, as though it had always belonged there. 1 turn. The sound of thunder. 2 turns. The wind wailing through the cracks of the house. 3 turns. Silence. The lock clicked, and the door swung inward on its own. A stairway descended into darkness, the air cold and wet, smelling of stone and earth. She hesitated at the top step, holding the lamp high, its light trembling against the walls. Is someone down there? She whispered, her voice barely rising above the sound of the storm. No answer. Only the slow drip of water echoing from below. She stepped down, one stair at a time. The deeper she went, the quieter the world above became, until the only thing she could hear was her own breath. At the bottom, the passage opened into a narrow chamber lined with shelves. Old jars, boxes, and photographs sat covered in layers of dust. The air felt thick, ancient. Her lamp flickered again, and something caught her. A small trunk near the back, sealed with red wax. The symbol of the willow was stamped into it, the same as the carving on the door. She knelt, the key in her hand. It fit the lock perfectly. When she turned it, The seal cracked, and the lid lifted with a sigh. Inside were letters bound in silk, photographs of a young woman who looked almost exactly like her, and a silver locket, shaped like a tear. She opened the locket. Inside, two portraits faced each other, Liza Blackwood and a child with Sarah's eyes. A folded paper fell from beneath the chain. If you are reading this, then time has found its way back. The curse was never meant to keep us apart, but to keep the door closed. The one beneath the willow still waits. Sarah's vision blurred. Her breath came shallow. She felt the walls closing in, the air tightening around her throat. From somewhere behind her came the faint sound of breathing. Slow, patient, too close. She turned sharply, the lamp trembling in her grasp. In the flicker of light, she saw her own reflection standing across the room. Air face pale, her hair damp with soil, her eyes hollow and endless. The figure tilted its head, smiling with that same faint curve of lips she had seen in the window glass. It raised a finger to its lips and whispered her name. Sarah. Sarah. The lamps shattered. Darkness swallowed everything. The last thing she felt was the cold press of a hand closing over hers, guiding her fingers back to the key. As the storm raged above and the earth shifted under the roots of the willow, the cellar filled with the low murmur of two voices speaking the same name in unison. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let the echoes rest where the light cannot reach, and let the rain wash the whispers clean. This has been Midnight Murmurs Radio. With me, Evelyn Blackwood. Join me next time for Part 6, when morning returns and the secrets buried beneath the willow finally rise to meet the light. Asterisk, when dawn came. The storm had already passed, leaving the world outside drenched in quiet silver light. The Blackwood house stood still, wrapped in mist. Rainwater dripped from the edges of the roof, collecting in the grass near the willow tree that leaned gently over the earth, its branches trailing like soft fingers in the wind. Inside, the air felt different, lighter somehow, though the faint smell of damp soil still lingered near the cellar door. Thomas, the caretaker who had come that morning to check the property, noticed the trail of muddy footprints leading from the kitchen down to the cellar stairs. He called Sarah's name, his voice echoing through the empty rooms, but only silence answered. The lamp lay shattered on the floor, and beside it, the brass key glinted weakly in the morning light. Thomas frowned. It piqued up the cold metal pressing against his skin. He had seen that key before, years ago, when he worked for Sarah's grandmother, Mrs. Blackwood. She had warned him never to enter the cellar set, that the door was meant to stay closed until the willow stopped growing. But the willow had never stopped. He turned toward the stairwell, hesitating. The air that drifted up was strangely warm, carrying the faint scent of lilies and candle wax. Slowly, he descended the stairs. The light from above grew dimmer until only a thin glow followed him. When he reached the bottom, he froze. The trunk lay open, its contents scattered, the letters curling with moisture, but the photographs were gone, as was the locket. On the far wall, he saw something that hadn't been there before. A faint handprint pressed into the stone, as if someone had reached out from within. It twitched, and the stone pulsed softly under his fingertips, alive with a heartbeat, not his own. He stumbled back, nearly dropping the key. Then, from the darkness of the tunnel, a soft humming begun low, familiar and hauntingly gentle. It was a lullaby. He had heard Mrs. Blackwood sing it once to her daughter many years ago, before the child had vanished without explanation. The melody wove through the chamber, tender and sorrowful. Thomas whispered a prayer under his breath and turned to leave, but his foot struck something small and hard. Look, doon. A silver locket lay at his feet, open. Inside were Tufacisalisa and Sarah, both smiling faintly, both eyes gleaming with the same pale light. He felt his chest tighten as the humming grew louder, circling him. The lantern flickered, and for a brief moment he thought he saw a figure standing near the back of the Solera woman in a simple white dress, her hair hanging wet against her shoulders, her face calm and unreadable. "Who's there?" he called, though his voice trembled. The woman raised her hand, pointing toward the stairs. Thomas turned to look, and when he faced her again, she was gone. Only the scent of lilies remained. He ran up the stairs, his breath ragged, slamming the door shut behind him. He leaned against it, the wood cold against his back. The house was quiet once more. Outside, the clouds began to part, and sunlight spilled through the windows. For a moment, Thomas thought he heard laughter, soft and distant, like the sound of children playing in the garden. He stepped to the window and looked out. The willow tree swayed gently, its roots glistening with rain. Beneath it, where the earth had always been smooth, he saw a small mound of freshly turned soil, and beside it, a single white lily blooming where none had grown before. Thomas bowed his head, whispering, "Rest." But as he turned to leave, the reflection in the glass caught his eye. Standing just behind him was the same woman from the cellar. Her eyes calm, her lips moving in silence. He couldn't hear the words, but he understood them all the same. Keep the door closed. When it turned, the room was empty. The wind sighed through the cracks of the house, carrying with it the faint whisper of Sarah's name, repeated over and over until it faded into the sound of the morning rain. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let your thoughts rest beneath the quiet branches of the willow, where the past and present meet like mist on still water. This has been Midnight Murmurs Radio with Evelyn Blackwood. Sleep well, and may the secrets of the old tomb remain at peace until we meet again. The afternoon sun stretched across the hills, casting long golden beams that slipped through the dusty windows of the Blackwood house. The storm had washed everything clean, but the air still carried that lingering scent of rain and forgotten flowers. Sarah sat at the old writing desk in her room, the same desk where she had found her grandmother's letters the night before. Her fingers traced the grooves in the wood, small initials carved faintly into the corner. Evelisa Blackwood. She whispered the name as if saying it aloud could make sense of the strange pull she felt toward the old tomb behind the house. Ever since the night she had opened that trunk, her dreams had grown heavier. She would drift to sleep and see flashes of another lifelong dresses, candlelight, and a soft voice calling her "my little dove." When she awoke, her pillow was damp with tears. She couldn't explain. That morning, she had found dirt on her hands. Thomas had left without a word, though she'd seen the fear in his eyes when he handed her the silver locket he claimed to have found near the cellar door. Inside were two faces, hers and Elisa's, and, in the faint light of dawn, she could have sworn they blinked. Now, as she held the locket close, she felt warmth seeping through it, like a heartbeat against her palm. She closed her eyes and tried to focus on her breathing. The soft ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall echoed in her mind, like the rhythm of a guided sleep meditation, slow and calming. Each second passed like a whisper, peaceful, steady, coziest in its stillness. The afternoon haze deepened into amber. Sarah wandered through the corridor, her footsteps quiet on the wooden floorboards. She stopped near the library door, where a single book lay open on the floor, as though someone had been reading moments before. She knelt to pick it up. The spine was cracked, the pages yellowed. It was a ledger, filled with names and dates. Near the bottom of one page, she found her own name, Sarah Blackwood, written in elegant handwriting that wasn't hers. The date beside it read, October 8th, 1883. Her breath caught. Beneath it, a single line had been scribbled in haste. The willow knows the truth. A chill swept through the room, and she turned sharply. In the reflection of the glass cabinet, she thought she saw someone standing behind her, a pale woman, her face half hidden in shadow. But when Sarah turned, the room was empty. The house seemed to exhale slowly, as if it had been holding its breath all this time. She placed the book back on the shelf, her fingers trembling. From outside came a faint sound, the creak of wood, the rustle of leaves, and then humming. The same lullaby Thomas had heard before. Sarah followed it to the back door. The sky was turning violet now, the last light fading behind the distant hills. The willow tree stood there, its branches swaying gently as if in rhythm with the song. Beneath it, the mound of earth looked undisturbed, yet she could feel something stirring below, a quiet pulse that echoed the beating of her own heart. She stepped closer, whispering into the wind. "Alisa." The breeze answered with a sigh, carrying with it the faint scent of lilies. A sudden gust brushed against her cheek, cold and tender, almost like a caress. Sarah closed her eyes, letting the sound envelop her. The fear that had once gripped her chest softened into something else, something almost peaceful. As the night grew deeper, she felt the lines between the living and the lost blur, until all that remained was the gentle hum of memory. In that stillness, she finally understood. The tomb behind the house wasn't meant to frighten her, it was calling her home. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep, where the whisper of the willow becomes the soft rhythm of your dreams. You are safe now, wrapped in the calming quiet of the night, under the watch of forgotten souls who mean no harm. This has been another chapter of Midnight Murmurs Radio, where every shadow tells a story and every breath leads you closer to rest. Sleep well, dream softly, and let the mystery wait for morning. The night returned quietly, the moon rising pale and round above the drenched hills, its light sliding through the thin curtains like the breath of something ancient. The Blackwood house slept in silence, yet Sarah could not rest. She lay awake, her fingers still clutching the silver locket, as if it anchored her to the world of the living. Each tick of the clock felt slower than the last, echoing in the hollow rooms like a pulse fading beneath layers of time. Outside, the willow swayed gently in the moonlight, its branches whispering secrets to the wind. The sound seemed to come from every corner of the house, blending with her heartbeat until she could no longer tell where she ended and the old place began. At last, she rose, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. She felt drawn again toward the cellar, toward the truth that waited beneath the floor. The key that Thomas had left on the mantel seemed almost to shimmer as she approached. Her hand trembled when she picked it up, the cold metal warming instantly against her skin. "Just one more look," she whispered to no one. The door groaned softly as it opened. The stairs creaked under her bare feet. Candlelight flickered faintly from below, though she hadn't lit a single flame. The air was dense and sweet, heavy with the scent of lilies. When she reached the bottom, she saw the trunk again closed now, though she remembered leaving it open. She knelt beside it, pressing her palm against the lid. It was warm, as if something inside was breathing. Slowly, she lifted it open. Inside lay the letters, neatly arranged once more, and a folded dress white, delicate, edged with lace. Beneath the fabric was a mirror, its surface cloudy with age. When she looked into it, her reflection wavered. For a heartbeat, she didn't see herself at all. The face staring back was Eliza's, gentle, serene, and full of quiet sorrow. "Why?" Sarah whispered. "Because you've listened," the reflection answered, though no lips moved. The voice was soft, like a sigh carried on wind. "The others forgot. You remembered." Sarah felt tears gather in her eyes. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and for an instant she felt her hand pulled forward through the glass and into something colder, deeper. She gasped and withdrew, clutching the locket to her chest. The humming began again, surrounding her, tender and mournful. The ground trembled slightly, and from the wall behind the trunk came a faint cracking sound. Stones shifted, revealing an archaea tunnel she had never seen before. She hesitated only a moment before stepping through. The passage was narrow, lined with roots from the willow above, their thin tendrils glowing faintly with a silvery hue. At the end, the tunnel opened into a small chamber carved into the earth. There, beneath the roots, stood an ancient tombstone. Its surface was smooth and unmarked, except for a single inscription that shimmered as she approached. "To those who remember, we return." She knelt, tracing the words. Her tears fell onto the stone, and where they touched, faint light spread outward like veins of silver. A whisper brushed against her ear, Eliza's voice, full of peace. "It's over now. You've brought me home." The earth sighed, soft and low, and for the first time, the willow above stood still. Sarah sat in silence, her body bathed in moonlight filtering through unseen cracks in the ceiling. The air felt weightless, almost sacred. The fear that had haunted her since she'd arrived melted into calm understanding. The tomb had never been a place of death, it was a promise of remembrance. She closed her eyes, her breathing slowing, and for a moment she felt Eliza's hand rest gently over hers. When she opened her eyes again, the tomb was gone. Only the cool earth remained beneath her fingers. She walked back to the house under the whisper of the willow, her steps light, her heart quiet. In the mirror by the hall, her reflection smiled softly, both familiar and not. The night grew still once more. The past had settled. The secret of the old tomb had finally found peace. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let your thoughts rest beneath the willow's calm shadow, where memory turns to light, and every secret becomes forgiveness. You are safe, warm, and home once more. This has been Midnight Murmurs Radio with Evelyn Blackwood. Sleep deeply, dream kindly, and remember that quiet things always tell the truest stories. The Blackwood house had fallen silent again, its windows clouded by the dust of early autumn. The willow outside swayed lazily in the soft wind, its roots hidden deep beneath the soil that once held so many secrets. Weeks had passed since Sarah's arrival, and though the town believed she had gone back to Boston, the caretaker, Thomas, knew better. He had locked the doors, shuttered the windows, and left a lantern burning each night on the front porch, just as Mrs. Blackwood once did, to keep the spirits calm. But tonight, another visitor came, a historian named Daniel Whitaker, who had been studying forgotten burial customs across rural America. His research had led him here, to the small town of Ashfield Hollow, and the Blackwood property was his final stop before returning east. He parked his old sedan near the gate and stood for a moment, watching the mist roll across the overgrown yard. The air smelled faintly of wet leaves, and something older, something like candle smoke and lilies. He adjusted his glasses, clutching his notebook, and began the slow walk toward the porch. Every step crunched softly beneath his boots. When he reached the door, he hesitated, sensing a quiet hum beneath the stillness, as though the earth itself were breathing. "Old houses remember things," he murmured to himself, echoing a line from one of his lectures. Inside, the air was thick but not unpleasant. Dust floated in the narrow shafts of light that spilled through the curtains. On the mantelpiece, he saw a silver locket lying open beside a faded photograph of a woman in a white dress. Her eyes seemed to follow him as he moved. He wrote in his notebook, "Possible site of private tomb, 19, the Century family estate." Strong oral legends of haunting. As he explored the parlor, he noticed something peculiar, a faint melody, almost too soft to hear, coming from the direction of the cellar door. He paused, listening. It wasn't the wind. It was humming, slow, tender, rhythmic, a lullaby. He turned the handle. The door resisted at first, then opened with a tired sigh. The air that rose from below was cool and damp, carrying the scent of rain and old stone. He descended carefully, his flashlight slicing through the dark. The cellar looked untouched, save for the trunk in the corner. He knelt beside it, brushing away the dust. On its lid was a faint carving E. Be to those who remember. His pulse quickened. This was no ordinary family crypt. He opened the trunk slowly. Inside were the letters, still tied neatly with ribbon, and beneath them a small leather-bound journal. The first page bore a name written in elegant script: Sarah Blackwood. Frowned. Blackwood? Blackwood? Whispered. But this journal stated 1883. He turned the pages, his eyes widening. The entries described dreams, voices, and a woman named Elisa, who sang beneath the willow. Each page grew more frantic, the handwriting trembling as if written in fear or desperation. The final line chilled him. The tomb opens when the willow remembers. Suddenly, the air shifted. The candle he had lit flickered violently, though there was no wind. He stood, his flashlight trembling in his hand. From the shadows came a faint, familiar whisper. Daniel. He froze. No one should have known his name. Who's there? Calide. Silence answered, thick and suffocating. Then, as he turned toward the stairs, he saw movement near the far wall, the faint outline of a woman, her figure half-shrouded in mist. Her voice was barely audible, like a sigh. Please, don't wake the roots. The light flickered again, and she was gone. Only the scent of lilies remained. Daniel's heart pounded. He backed up toward the stairs, but when he reached the first step, something cold brushed his ankle a touch, light and deliberate. He stumbled, dropping the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, landing face up, and illuminating the wall behind the trunk. There, faint but unmistakable, was the shape of a hand pressed into the stone. Beneath it, freshly etched into the earth, were two names, Eliza Blackwood and Sarah Blackwood. The soil trembled slightly, and Daniel heard the faint sound of breathing not his own. He whispered to the empty air. "What are you trying to tell me?" The whisper answered, closer now, almost tender. Remember. As the sound faded, Daniel found himself unable to move. The room seemed to pulse softly, as if alive. Then, slowly, the light dimmed, and the house above creaked, settling into its long, ancient rhythm once again. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let your thoughts settle like dust in the still air of forgotten rooms. Breathe deeply, calmly, and let the whisper of the willow guide you to rest. This is Midnight Murmurs Radio with Evelyn Blackwood, reminding you that not all who linger mean harm. Some simply wish to be remembered. Sleep now, and dream gently of the stories that never truly end. Daniel woke to the sound of rain tapping softly against the windows, a slow, steady rhythm that felt almost deliberate, as if the storm had returned for a reason. The lantern on the table flickered weakly, its light painting trembling shapes across the walls of the parlor. He had fallen asleep there, head resting on Sarah's journal, though he didn't remember closing his eyes. For a moment, he wasn't sure if it had been night or day. The fire in the hearth had long gone cold, yet the faint scent of lilies still lingered in the room. He rubbed his temples and looked at the journal again. A loose sheet had slipped out while he slept, page covered in faded ink and small, delicate handwriting. At first, he thought it was another diary entry, but as he read, he realized it was something else entirely. A map drawn with careful precision. It showed the outline of the house, the willow tree, and what appeared to be a tunnel beneath the roots. At the bottom of the page, written in red ink, was a single phrase: "The light beneath will remember us all." He stared at it, his mind spinning. Was this what Sarah had discovered before she disappeared? He stood, lighting another lantern, and stepped to the window. The willow tree loomed in the mist, its long branches trailing across the ground. The air outside shimmered faintly in the moonlight, as though the storm itself carried a pulse. Taking his coat, he stepped out into the rain. The grass was wet beneath his boots, and the sound of the wind in the branches felt like whispering voices. When he reached the base of the willow, He knelt and brushed away the fallen leaves. The soil was soft, freshly disturbed. With his lantern beside him, he began to dig, each motion slow and careful. The rain grew heavier, but Daniel barely noticed. Minutes passed, and then his hand struck something solid wood, old and splintered. He cleared away the dirt, revealing a narrow door buried beneath the roots. The handle was rusted, but the hinges gave way with a sigh. A cool draft rose from below, carrying the faint scent of damp stone and, impossibly, candle wax. He descended the short stairway, the lantern's glow stretching across the walls. Symbols had been carved into the stone circles, lines, and names half erased by time. At the bottom, the passage opened into a chamber, smaller than he expected, and at its center stood a single pedestal. Upon it lay a small wooden box, sealed with black wax. He hesitated before breaking the seal. Inside was a lock of pale hair tied with silk, and beneath it, another letter addressed, not to Eliza, but to Daniel Whitaker. His breath caught. The ink looked fresh. He unfolded it carefully. "You were always meant to find this," it read. "The roots remember what the world forgets. Every life that passes through this house becomes part of its story. Do not fear, the light beneath it is memory, not curse." As he read the final line, his lantern flickered violently and went out. Darkness swallowed him. Yet the air around him began to glow faintly, a soft silver radiance rising from the roots that curled along the floor and ceiling. The entire chamber pulsed like a living heart. He felt warmth spread through his chest, comforting, calm, almost peaceful. Then he heard her voice again. "You came back." It was Sarah's voice, gentle, distant, but unmistakable. "Dani, tourne," though there was no one there. The glow brightened, and from the wall before him, two faint silhouettes began to take form, a woman with long hair and another standing beside her, their outlines made of light and shadow. Eliza and Sarah. Their faces were serene, their eyes kind. "The tomb was never meant to trap us," Sarah whispered. "It was meant to remember." Daniel felt tears rising without knowing why. The two figures smiled softly, their forms beginning to fade. "Tell them," Eliza said. "Tell them. We're at peace." The chamber fell silent. The glow dimmed, leaving only the soft patter of rain above. Daniel blinked, and when he opened his eyes again, the box was gone, replaced by a single white lily resting where it had been. He stood there for a long time, breathing the quiet air, before finally whispering, "I will." When he climbed back into the night, the storm had stopped. The sky was clear, and the moonlight lay gentle on the house. The willow tree stood motionless, glistening with rain, its branches heavy with dew. As Daniel turned toward the path, he saw movement in the upstairs window. Just for an instant, the faint silhouette of two women standing side by side, watching over the house that had finally remembered them. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The rain has ceased, the earth is calm, and every secret has found its place among the roots. Let your breath slow, let your body rest, and let the whisper of the willow guide you into the coziest, most peaceful dreams. This is Midnight Murmurs Radio, and I am Evelyn Blackwood, wishing you a magical and calming night. The next morning arrived with a quiet grayness, the kind that settles gently after a long night of rain. Daniel awoke on the parlor sofa, the fire rekindled, and for a fleeting moment he wondered if everything that had happened under the willow tree had been a dream. But when he looked toward the table, he saw the white lily resting where Sarah's journal had been. Its petals glowed faintly, untouched by time or weather. The memory of the underground chamber came flooding back. The letter, the voices, the soft radiance of the roots. He pressed a hand against his chest, feeling a warmth still lingering beneath his skin, as if the light below had left a mark. By noon, the clouds had thinned, and faint sunlight spilled across the manor's facade. Daniel sat by the window with his notebook open, scribbling every detail he could. Recall the map, the carvings, the letter that bore his name. He wrote for hours, capturing not just facts but sensations. The whispers in the rain, the hum of the air beneath the earth, the calm that followed the light. When he was done, he composed an email to his supervisor at the university, attaching photographs of the journal pages and a transcript of his notes. Subject: Preliminary findings. Blackwood Estates discovered an underground chamber beneath the willow tree. Found relics possibly connected to Eliza Blackwood, Ace Correspondence, 1840s. Unusual preservation of organic material. Awaiting further instruction before proceeding. He clicked send, feeling an odd mixture of relief and unease. For the first time, the house felt quiet, not haunted. But listening, an hour later, a new message appeared in his inbox. The sender's name was unfamiliar. Dr. Miriam Ashcroft. The subject line read, "Regarding your recent findings, frowned. Tename senti on the university roster." Curious, he opened it. "Mr. Whitaker, I have reviewed your submission. You must cease all excavation and documentation immediately. The chamber you discovered is not part of any authorized research site, and its contents are under the protection of the Blackwood Trust. You are hereby instructed to leave the estate within 24 hours. Sincerely, Dr. Miriam Ashcroft, Archivist." Blackwood Trust. Daniel blinked at the screen. The Blackwood Trust. He had never heard of it. He reread the message twice, noting the tone formal, but urgent, almost desperate. At the bottom beneath her signature, there was a faint digital watermark. A sigil that looked eerily similar to the symbols he had seen carved into the tunnel walls. He felt a chill crawl down his spine. He started typing a reply. "Dr. Ashcroft, I appreciate your concern, but I assure you, the chamber was found accidentally during authorized research. If there's historical significance tied to the Blackwood family, perhaps we can coordinate documentation." Before he could finish, another email appeared. Same sender. No subject line. Only one sentence in the body. "The light remembers those who disturb it. Leave before dusk." Daniel's hand froze over the keyboard. His heart began to pound. He glanced at the window. The sky was already beginning to dim, clouds thickening again over the fields. He closed the laptop, stood, and began pacing the room. Who was Miriam Ashcroft, and how did she know what had happened under the willow tree? The letter Ed found had spoken of memory, not curse. Yet this warning felt like both. As he moved past the parlor doorway, Something caught his eye. The portraits on the wall, family members of the Blackwood line, seemed different, subtly rearranged. The painting of Eliza, which had once shown her gazing toward the left, now faced forward, eyes glimmering faintly in the dim light. Daniel approached slowly. For a heartbeat, he thought he saw her lips parting slightly, as though about to speak. Then a whisper drifted through the still air. Not all heirs protect what they inherit. He stepped back, breath quickening. The house had gone silent again, but outside, the willow tree swayed violently. Though the wind had not returned, he grabbed his bag, shoving the journal, the lily, and his notes inside. He didn't know whether to leave or to stay long enough to understand. But before he could decide, a knock echoed through the front door. 3 slow, deliberate taps. He froze. The sound came again louder. This time, Daniel hesitated, then moved toward the entrance. Through the frosted glass of the door, he could make out a tall, silhouetted woman, still and silent. He unlocked the latch and opened the door slightly. A woman in a dark overcoat stood on the porch, her gray hair tied back, her eyes sharp and distant. She held a leather satchel and wore a pendant in the shape of the same sigil Daniel had seen in the letter. "Mr. Whittaker," she said softly, "you found something you shouldn't have." Daniel swallowed hard. "You're Dr. Ashcroft." "Yes," she replied, stepping past him into the hall, uninvited. "And if you wish to keep your sanity intact, you'll listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you." She turned toward the parlor, her gaze briefly flicking to the window overlooking the willow tree. "That light you awakened it remembers more than you think, and not everything it remembers wishes to rest." The lily on the table trembled, one petal falling soundlessly to the floor. Asterisk. Daniel froze as the woman stepped into the house, as if she knew every brick, every faint creak in the walls. Miriam Ashcroft set her satchel on the table, removed her leather gloves, and scanned the room as though checking on a past long forgotten. "This house holds memories," she said slowly, "and you have opened something that should not have been opened." Daniel stayed near the door, his heart hammering, eyes fixed on the silver emblem on her chest, a circle with 3 intersecting branches, identical to the symbol carved into the walls of the tunnel below the willow. "I didn't mean to," he said, voice shaky. "I'm just researching the history of this property. I had no idea what lay beneath." Miriam smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "No one ever accidentally finds that tomb," she said. "It chooses. Who will find it?" Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Miriam pulled out an aged envelope and opened it, revealing a yellowed photograph. In it stood a group of people wearing black cloaks around the old willow, each bearing the same emblem on their chest. In the center was a young blonde woman, her face reminiscent of Eliza in the old portrait. "This is the Blackwood Trust," she continued, "founded in 1883 after Eliza's death. Our task was to keep the memories in the tomb at rest, but over generations, that memory began to awaken." Daniel studied the photo carefully. In the lower corner, a man held a gray leather book with a cover engraved with 3 letters. Luxmamu. He remembered the same symbols etched in the chamber below. So, Eliza left something in the tomb. he asked. Miriam nodded. Not just a secret, but a fragment of a soul. They believed memory could be preserved through the light, Rituada, same light you saw beneath the willow. Over time, it became alive. It doesn't just remember, it lives. Daniel's throat tightened. Alive. Miriam glanced toward the window, where the rain had begun to fall again. Have you felt, watched, heard whispers in the night? Dreams of a woman calling your name? Daniel froze. He had never told anyone about the dream of Eliza in the underground chamber, her hand radiating faint light, whispering. Miriam continued, as though reading his mind. It was no dream. The memory is trying to draw you in. It seeks someone in tune with the light, someone capable of opening the final door. Daniel stepped back, overwhelmed. Miriam approached, her voice lowering. You must leave here before the full moon. Otherwise, the memory will consume you, and you will never wake again. Daniel glanced at the photograph one last time. At its edge, half hidden, was a tall figure wearing a ring, engraved with a W. His chest tightened. The photo seemed to quiver, as if someone exhaled through it. Suddenly, the overhead light flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. For a fleeting moment, Daniel heard a deep, hoarse, familiar male whisper right beside his ear. Do not trust her. Miriam spun, eyes wide, voice trembling. You heard it, didn't you? It has awakened. From the corner, the curtain lifted, though the window remained closed. Faint, wavy strands of light coiled across the ceiling, gathering in the center of the room into a vague, half-human, half-mist form. Daniel stood frozen. The form's face mirrored the man from the photograph, and in a brief instant, its glowing eyes reflected onto his neck, the same place where the silver locket that Eliza wore in his dream now appeared etched into his skin. Miriam stepped back, voice shaking. Impossible. You are the heir of the light. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, and the willow swayed gently, as if listening. Daniel staggered back, heart hammering, as the pale form in the center of the room wavered like smoke caught in a beam of moonlight. He could feel Ethan almost imperceptible vibration inside his chest, a pulse that matched the rhythm of the glowing eyes of the apparition. Miriam Ashcroft remained tense, her eyes darting between him and the shifting light. It knows you, she whispered. The fragment inside you is awakening. You were never meant to come here unprepared. Daniel swallowed hard, trying to steady his racing thoughts. Fragment? Fragment? What fragment? Miriam shook her head slowly. A part of the memory. A piece of Eliza's essence was never laid to rest. It was bound to the light beneath the willow, waiting for someone in the Whitaker line to carry it forward. That someone is you. Daniel felt a warmth spreading from his chest to his arms, tingling along his fingertips. The locket on his neck had been quiet all night, but now it glowed faintly, pulsing in synchrony with the mysterious energy filling the room. He raised his hands almost instinctively, and a soft, silvery light extended from him, filling the space between the floating mist and the walls. The figure before him steadied, becoming clear. Eliza and the man from the photograph, standing side by side, luminous and serene. "Delight chooses," she said softly, voice flowing like water. "It is not a curse, Daniel. It is memory alive, seeking its keeper." Daniel's knees nearly gave way. "But if Eliza's gaze was gentle yet firm. "Then the memory will wander, untethered, and darkness will consume what should remain." A sudden shiver ran through the room as Daniel felt a tug toward the hallway. He turned and saw the hallway walls flicker, shadows stretching into shapes he recognized the corridors from his dream. The underground tunnel beneath the willow, the faint silhouettes of Blackwood ancestors. Miriam's voice broke through, urgent. "You must focus. The memory will merge with you, but only if you accept it fully. Otherwise, it will resist." Daniel closed his eyes and inhaled deeply, feeling the warmth of the locket, the pulse beneath his ribs, the presence of the glowing figures before him. Slowly, deliberately, he extended his arms, palms outward, and whispered, "I accept." Instantly, the room shifted. The mist became soft golden light, flowing like liquid through his veins. The willow outside seemed to sway in unison, though the wind had long since stopped. He could hear the faintest whispers of the past, the lullaby from the chamber, the echoes of laughter and sorrow, voices speaking secrets of decades long gone. The light within him strengthened, and he felt clarity, a sense of calm authority. The memories that had been fragmented, restless, and haunting now aligned. Daniel could see glimpses of events he had never lived. Eliza wandering the halls, letters being written and hidden, rituals of light beneath the willow, ancestors watching over the tomb. Miriam stepped back, awe replacing her fear. "It's working," she murmured. "You are the anchor now." Daniel opened his eyes and saw the forms of Eliza and the man shimmer one last time, bowing subtly before dissolving into the soft glow that now emanated from him. The parlor was quiet. The rain had ceased. The only sound was the faint sigh of the house settling. Daniel lowered his hands, feeling exhaustion and peace intertwine. The locket's glow dimmed to a soft pulse, and the warmth in his chest remained steady, comforting. Outside, the willow stood motionless, its roots deep and still. Yet Daniel knew that beneath it, the memory of the Blackwoods slept, tethered safely within him. Miriam approached slowly, her expression unreadable. "You have accepted the legacy," she said. "But remember, Daniel, this is only the beginning. The memory is patient. It will speak to you in whispers, in dreams, in light. You must always listen." Daniel nodded, his voice barely above a whisper. "I will. I will." As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. Let your mind rest with the calm of memories now at peace, the warmth of light within you, and the gentle sway of the willow outside. Every breath is steady, every heartbeat calm. Sleep deeply, dream safely, and know that the past, present, and future can coexist in harmony when one listens to the quiet truths. This is Midnight Murmurs Radio with Evelyn Blackwood, guiding you through the coziest, most peaceful night. Asterisk. The evening had settled over Ashfield Hollow with an almost tangible quiet, the kind that presses gently against the ears, making every sound from the house and yard feel amplified yet distant. Daniel stood in the center of the parlor, the locket resting against his chest, its faint glow pulsing steadily, harmonizing with the soft rhythm of his own heartbeat. Outside, the willow's branches stretched toward the sky, motionless but somehow alive, as if listening for the final whispers of memory to fade. He walked slowly toward the hallway, each step measured, feeling the echoes of the past, tracing his movements, the laughter of children, the crackling of candle flames, the rustle of papers long forgotten, the hushed voices of ancestors who had watched over the Blackwood estate for generations. He approached the staircase, leading to the upper rooms, where portraits of the family adorned the walls. Each gaze seemed less stern now, more serene, as though recognizing the resolution that had taken place below. The soft light within him spread slowly, touching each surface, each shadow, and he realized that the restless spirits of the Blackwood line were no longer bound to unrest. They had returned to the safety of memory, tethered within the living. Miriam Ashcroft followed silently, her face composed but lined with relief. "The trust has always been about balance," she said softly. "The living and the memory, past and present. Now you hold the key. Daniel, the last echoes will rest through you." Daniel nodded. "Step into the parlor window." Moonlight poured in, illuminating the willow tree in soft silver. He could feel the energy pulsing beneath its roots, steady and calm. No long hair wild, no longer insistent. He knelt and laid his palm against the wooden floor, sensing the pulse of generations, the story of a family that had waited for him to awaken the light within. He whispered, "Rest now." "Oh, of you," the house responded. The air seemed to sigh, a gentle exhale that carried away decades of lingering sorrow and unfinished business. From the shadows, faint forms shimmered one last time. The translucent figures of Eliza, even the mysterious man from the photograph, all bowing slightly before dissolving into the ambient glow that now permeated Daniel's chest. The locket warmed with a comforting weight, as if the essence of the Blackwoods rested entirely within him, peaceful and complete. Miriam finally spoke, her voice almost a whisper, yet filled with certainty. "You have done what no one else could. The legacy is at rest, the memory anchored. The house will be quiet now, but it will always remember, gently, through you." Daniel exhaled slowly, a sense of calm washing over him, coiling through every muscle and thought. The willow swayed slyly in the windless night, the sound almost like a lullaby carried from the roots themselves. He turned to Miriam. "It's truly over, isn't it?" She nodded. "For now." For now, the story is safe. The family can rest. And you can sleep knowing you have guided it home. Daniel stepped to the doorway and looked back at the parlor one final time. Everything appeared ordinary, yet nothing would ever feel ordinary again. The whispers had faded, replaced by the steady, calming pulse of memory at rest. As the story fades, allow yourself to drift into a peaceful sleep. The house is calm. The willow sways gently under the moonlight, and every secret has finally found its place. Breathe deeply, slowly, and let the warmth within you echo the light that Daniel now carries. Sleep safely, dream gently, and remember that even the oldest legacies can find rest when someone listens to the quiet truths. This is Midnight Murmurs Radio with Evelyn Blackwood, wishing you the coziest, most magical and peaceful night.